Happy birthday to Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. A decade ago, this masterpiece of a game released, and for the last 3 years, it's been a permanent staple in my greatest games Hall of Fame. Composed of a brilliant story with infinitely memorable moments and characters, a fun combat system with plenty of mastery to achieve, an amazing soundtrack that gets your blood pumping, and of course, a brilliant boss lineup, it's no wonder why this game is so highly regarded even today. So, how do these bosses I just talked about stack up under my critical eye? Well, there's only one way to find out. What better way to celebrate the game's anniversary than with a boss ranking? As a side note, I jumped into these boss fights after not having played the game in over a year, and I played on hard difficulty, which I find to be the best challenge level for just casual play. I will also not be including any bosses from Jetstream Sam's DLC, and I won't be including the helicopter or grad mini bosses, because the latter is more of a heavy enemy type by the next level, and the former... You call this a boss? With a final note, even with the bottom entries, every boss here is at least a 7.5 out of 10. They're all good fights, with some basically reaching perfection. That's how you know you've got a damn good game. Without any further ado, let's get into the rankings. Number 9, Kamsen. Even in a roster of boss excellence, somebody has to bring up the bottom spot, and that man, or half a man, is Kamsen, the only original DLC boss of this game. Exclusive to Blade Wolf's DLC, Kamsen is a loud, shouty robot man that needs to be murdered so the robot dog can have his freedom, and I am all on board with this. It's unique for more than just the playable character as well. Kamsen has a big heavy axe that he sweeps and slams all around, as well as an unblockable grab with a blockable follow-up move, but what's interesting is when he smashes the ground and causes these barricades to come up all around him. This boss then becomes something of a stealth fight. You have to maneuver around the cover until you can get behind Kamsen for a highly damaging stealth attack, while facing heavy damage if you're caught. It's a fun wrinkle to the encounter that makes the fight stand out and utilizes all of Blade Wolf's available gameplay. Kamsen as a character doesn't have much to him, but he brings enough large ham energy to be entertaining, and kicking his ass is satisfying. Despite being at the bottom of the list, the boss is still pretty good, but because Blade Wolf is significantly less fun to play as than Raiden or Sam, this guy does suffer for that. Ah well, better luck next time. Oh, that's right, you have no next time. Because you're dead. Number 8, Blade Wolf. Surprisingly, a boss that becomes a standard enemy later in the game isn't at the bottom of the list. It helps that Blade Wolf is a damn good fight. After an entertaining intro cutscene, which is basically the norm for Metal Gear Rising, Blade Wolf goes ham. He charges at you with damaging attacks, leaps around the arena before bounding it for slashes, whips around his chainsaw tail, and all of it is parryable, making him a good teacher for the beginning of the game, learning your essential mechanics, in a more intense environment than the actual tutorial boss. Blade Wolf will dip out and summon minions in 2 separate intermissions, but these can allow for Zandatsu health restoring, so I don't mind the addition of the standard enemies here, because they serve an actual gameplay purpose besides inflated difficulty. He has a good damage output without being ridiculous for this point in the game, so full credit to his design. One of the best parts of the boss though is the dynamic music in the background. Every main boss in Metal Gear Rising has a unique, fantastic music track in the background that largely remains instrumental until the peak of the fight occurs, at which point the lyrics kick in, and goddamn does it sound badass every time. Every music track is amazing, providing some insight into the character it represents, and Blade Wolf's is no exception. Ultimately, the Robo Doggo wasn't too hard of a battle even for my rusty self, but it's still a fun bout to help you warm up into the game even more. Number 7, Metal Gear Excelsis. From a small robot to a big robot, and not a big step up in quality if I'm honest. Excelsis certainly looks the part of an amazing boss, from finding your KO'd Blade Wolf to staring down a giant crab machine piloted by a madly charismatic US senator. What more could you ask for? Unfortunately, this fight falls into the trappings that many large bosses do in video games. As in, the fight comes down to, when is it my turn to do something? Far too often for my liking. Excelsis slams down its blades and its feet, and you have to use the couple seconds they stay down to attack them, doing as much damage as you can in a short time. Not the most riveting gameplay, but with the properly upgraded weapon it doesn't take too long, and I find it kinda fun, pushing your skill to see how much you can squeeze out of those few second windows. The issue is when the game makes you block when you try to dodge, and then Excelsis does damage to you through your parry. What do you expect? You're parrying several thousand tons of crush force. After doing enough damage and dodging the occasional sideways sweep, the boss will be stunned, and then you get to Zandatsu part of its leg. It then takes the time to fire some pretty powerful lasers at you while these giant leg robots try to kick you about. The strat here is to let the lasers knock them down to critical level. Then Zandatsu these thick boys for the health refills, or just for the style points to get the S rank. Unfortunately, the lasers can lock you into a corner, and the hitboxes are a little flawed, so I'm not a fan of this phase overall. The second phase is exactly the same as the first, but the finale? Oh my god. You flip the giant machine over by its leg, then you rip off said leg, then you fight a duel with the machine using its own damn building-sized sword leg, and then you destroy it with a Zandatsu which takes place at blinding speed with this building-sized weapon. The sheer spectacle, the amazing music, the charisma of Armstrong, and the absolutely awesome ending makes this boss enjoyable and memorable despite the mechanical simplicity, and I'm perfectly happy to cut through it every time I replay the last level. Number 6, Sundowner. This boss gets quite a bit of shtick from the community, and it's really not hard to see why. Considering the second phase of the fight is the best part, and you can entirely skip it by accident like I did on my first playthrough from 2019, that's not the best setup for a great boss fight. For a character that has so much build-up, Sundowner can come across as a bit of a disappointment. He starts off with a shield that makes him fucking invincible, as he's so keen to remind you, but it also makes him a pushover in melee combat. His attacks are basic, the only time he caught me off guard was due to me not remembering his combos. The shield is his full gimmick. If you hit it, it explodes. Simple enough. You get through this via specific blade mode slashing to open up panels of his shield, which you then also cut off, lessening his defense by a third. This is a fantastic mechanic, encouraging you to be precise with a mechanic you've likely been swinging wildly with this entire time. The problem is that it's practically the whole fight, and you don't even need to cut the shield off in order to damage him. You can dance around his basic moveset the entire time as you drain his tiny health bar down to nothing and end the fight right away. For the sake of his dignity, I fought him for a second time for recording purposes while trying to destroy the shield before damaging him significantly in order to experience the second phase for as long as possible, which is still not the easiest thing in the world to do because he refused to take my bait, and my fully upgraded weapon melted him even when I was trying to hold back. In the second phase, he busts out his iconic scissor blades, and we get more of a fight. He's a lot faster with a lot more varied attacks, including an unblockable scissor cleave follow-up to most of his combos, and he'll periodically summon in minions while grabbing outside pillars to smack you with. These minions, like with Excelsis and Blade Wolf, are health refills more than actual threats, and I'm fairly sure you can just Zandatsu the pillar at the correct time to destroy his makeshift weapon and bring him back down to basics. If Sundowner had more health, he'd be a great fight with a lot of depth and fun mechanics, but he's just so easy to kill even when you're trying not to, that you'll more than often miss his best parts. The helicopters in the back are just annoying, the ending finisher is flashy but not the game's best, there's nothing to save Sundowner from the bottom half of the list. A shame, because that music is god tier. Number 5, Mistral. Oh my god, it's a woman! And she's kicking my ass! If she wasn't a psycho robot chick with 50 arms, I'd be so in love right now. Well, maybe not. Her fight isn't quite 10 out of 10. Don't get me wrong though, the fight with Mistral is pretty darn good, and she's much more balanced than Sundowner. One could almost say she's quite the handful. You know, because of all the hands. I wonder what she can do with those things. Beat your ass, apparently, and not in the fun way. Unless you like it like that, in which case, it will be the fun way. For the actual fight, there'll be a ton of these little orb dudes running around the arena that grab you to interrupt your combos and drain your blade mode meter, though they die really easily and drop health replenishing pickups. While this happens, Mistral is whipping you with her polearm via unblockable whip attacks, obviously, and various melee strikes, such as this cool spinning charge move that she repeats a couple times before stopping. If you open her up with the right damage and attack styles, you can actually blade mode the whip and chop off all of her arms, causing her to jump out of reach to rearm herself. See what I did there? After a quick blade mode QTE, which are way better than standard button presses by the way, you swap to a narrow pipe arena, which basically has the same mechanics as the first phase with a few different attacks from Mistral, just with a unique, mostly 2D perspective. The final phase is in a smaller square arena where Mistral goes all out, switching up her timings, extending her combos, and bringing out all of her tricks to destroy you. More spins, more variety on the unblockables, the whole works. The moment the lyrics kick in as the third phase begins, your adrenaline will be firing on all cylinders as the arena burns around you. With a creative liquid nitrogen finisher, memorable cutscenes before and after, and a cool character to fight in Mistral, this fight is a solid pick for the middle of the list. Number 4, Monsoon. Scraping his way from the bottom 3, upon my recent replay, Monsoon finds himself just outside the podium positions. It's pretty easy to see why I didn't like him much before, and it's also pretty easy to see why I like him a lot more now. I got good. Monsoon is a long and tough fight, but he's filled with mechanical goodness and visual spectacle the whole way through. After a long conversation about philosophy, killing, nihilism, and memes, Raiden decides to cut loose of his inhibitions and cut Monsoon apart in much the same way. Though it looks like somebody beat us to it. Monsoon's gimmick is that he's magnetic. His body is made of dozens of parts that he can separate and reattach at will, giving him a lot of variety in attacks and defense. He attacks with size, darting around to attack you from land or sky, and even obscuring your vision with grenades from time to time. Once he hits 70%, he activates his fucking magnets, and shows us that they do indeed work, by throwing military vehicles at you by the handful, all of which can be sliced apart by blade mode. From this point on, Monsoon is in a special Ultra Instinct Magnet mode, to where you can't hurt him at all with your basic melee. His attacks go nuts here, such as sending his arms out and legs out to beat your ass from a distance, and also sending all his body parts flying at you in a flurry of deadly metal. However, if you manage to perfectly parry certain attacks of his, you can get a window to blade mode his head, knocking him out of his special state and letting you unleash some damage on him before the fight resumes. If you don't want to wait, just throw an EMP grenade, it has the same effect, and they're dropped by destroying the earlier mentioned vehicles. The fight carries on with just more of these mechanics until the end, and it's honestly pretty great. Monsoon's magnetic attacks are a visual spectacle, the fight lasts for a good duration, and it's a true test of all your skills. The finisher is also fun, with Raiden running up this giant stone pillar, pinning Monsoon to the wall, and making the Nihilist cry for mercy. It's an unforgettable fight, well worthy of a spot this high on the list. Number 3, Metal Gear Ray. The first boss of this game comes in at number 3, showing off just how much the game kicks off with a bang, and it doesn't stop banging for the entire 4-hour experience. For a tutorial boss, Ray is incredible, as is standard for Platinum games. Metal Gear Ray is a huge part of the previous Metal Gear games, a feared machine, and then you slaughter this boss like it's nothing. Ray teaches you important mechanics, parrying attacks no matter how large they are, ninja running to deflect bullets, destroying missiles and other technology to recover health items, and gives you a good base for practicing your combo strings. The attacks are all simple, guns, missiles, huge lasers, stomps, charges, and a tail swing, but the sheer spectacle and the fact it's a tutorial boss makes the simplicity work in its favour. It occasionally jumps away and forces you to chase it down, but it's never obnoxious about it. With every parry, you get a chance to slice apart a piece of its armor, or one of its turrets, which is your main form of damage. Once you've gotten it to low health, you close in on it and get treated to possibly the second most iconic moment in the entire game. This sequence is so damn good, you just threw a fucking Metal Gear and sliced it apart while it was still in the air. The second part of the fight takes you by surprise, with a smaller arena, a few different styles of attacks, but it's all much the same in terms of difficulty, mechanics, and of course, style. The true finishing segment, involving missile skipping, running down a breaking building, and perfectly bisecting this massive robot, is a truly unforgettable set piece that shows off Metal Gear Rising's unmatched cinematic action, all within the first 20 minutes of gameplay. I love fighting Metal Gear Ray, it's entertaining every time I do, and it's one of my favourite intro bosses of all time. Number 2, Jetstream Sam. If there's anything you can take away from my boss ranking videos, I like boss fights that feel like you're battling your equal, or even better, your rival. Think Lady Maria from Bloodborne, Virgil from Devil May Cry, Jean from Bayonetta, Matt from Wii Sports. Jetstream Sam brings you that battle. This guy's been a thorn in your side, or a sword in your arm, from the opening level. I love Sam as a character, and his rivalry with Raiden is compelling and persists through the game, giving you plenty of build up to their showdown. He's trash talking you, he's breaking your philosophy, and now he stands in your way for one final sword duel, in a barren desert at the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. In a way, I love the understated setting. No grand arena, no spectacular view, just two men with different viewpoints trying to prove which one is better through a fight to the death. And what a fight it is! You got a taste of Sam earlier in the opening level through an unwinnable boss fight, seeing his basic mechanics. In this fight, you see the same moves, except he actually starts trying and breaks out his entire moveset, and it is intense. There's no minions here, no gimmicks, it's just two powerful swordsmen going at it. Sam's attacks are fast and forceful, and he can come at you from a few different angles, using combos of 4 from the front, or even leaping into the sky, but going blade for blade with him is a pretty straightforward affair. Less straightforward is when you knock the sword out of his hand and he just says, "Bring it." This phase used to give me a ton of trouble, but it's pretty simple now. Just be good at parrying and watch out for his kicks from those dummy thick Brazilian legs. Sam primarily tries to charge in and throw you to the ground, and he'll automatically counter your ninja run triangle attack and your jumping homing kick, so don't be doing that unless you wish to kiss the dirt. How is he somehow more difficult without the sword? After a while of doing this, you'll go pick the sword back up and fully unleash the Brazilian beast. Mini judgment cut slashes, triple charges with tremendous force, firing rocks at you, which is the one attack I can never seem to properly manage. It's a tense and demanding sword fight that has a brilliant pace and back and forth action. The fact that this boss is just a level by itself means it's endlessly replayable too. And with this level of quality, I'll be coming back to face Jetstream Sam for a long time yet. Number 1, Senator Armstrong. And for the top spot, we have one of the greatest bosses of all time, and I mean no hyperbole when I say that. Before I rant about just how good this fight is, let me go into the detail of the insanity that is Senator Armstrong in this game. He shows up for about a minute in the early game and does nothing, we barely hear about him since then, and now he's here in the final level making the most amazing speeches a politician has ever done, while dribbling Raiden around like a football. All because of nanomachines, son. After Raiden takes down Metal Gear Excelsis, he walks out of the mech and absorbs all the energy from it, turning into the cover image of a Men's Health magazine, and starts kicking around the previously invincible Raiden like he's nothing. It's fucking insane and it's fucking awesome. I think I speak for everybody when I say, thank you, Japan. Armstrong raves about his twisted philosophy with so much charisma it's uncanny, and he delivers so many memeable and thought-provoking lines he could fill up an entire iFunny page and then debate all of the iFunniers. After a couple hopeless boss fights against him where he casually does the impossible by snapping your vibrator sword, and then blows up the entire Metal Gear Excelsis with one punch, Blade Wolf returns. He gives us Sam's sword, Raiden gives one of the most badass lines in the game, and the true fight begins. Armstrong has his entire body infused, or constructed, from nanomachines that give him enough strength to launch us across the arena with one punch, take dozens of sword slashes from the enhanced Murasama, and also bend fire, apparently. He gives off AoEs and several kinds of devastating firewalls, some of which section the arena into smaller segments, making his intense melee attacks harder to deal with. His melee swings may be slow, but they carry devastating force, and he can even launch into these charges that result in badass quicktime events if they're blocked, helping to take down his health bar just that little bit more. Oh yeah, and about that health bar, it's set to 200%. Don't fuck with this senator indeed. The rubble-tossing QTEs are the bane of many people's existences because they're hard, but with practice, you'll be slicing through them in no time and smacking Armstrong in the face, dealing damage and gaining some health back via nanopaste drops. At this point, he'll attack you with the full variety of his arsenal more often, including a healing mechanic that you can disrupt via careful blade mode slashes, or just hitting him in the back if you're lucky. All of these factors, combined with the best song in the entirety of Metal Gear Rising, as well as an incredibly badass finishing segment, results in one of the greatest bosses in video game history. Armstrong tests you on every mechanic you've learned from every boss in the game, while providing incredible narrative and gameplay payoffs for the entire duration. I even replayed this man on very hard mode immediately after my first fight on hard. I fell in love with the fight all over again and wanted to experience it even more. Senator Armstrong is a perfect finale boss, one of the greatest bosses of all time, and the obvious choice for the best boss in Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. And that's the list. I feel the number one choice was incredibly obvious, but I've wanted to rant and rave about how good Senator Armstrong is for literal years, and I'm glad I finally got the chance. Hopefully, Konami will now listen to the fans and finally give us the remaster of this brilliant game, or, God forbid, a sequel. We're all waiting with bated breath and prepared wallets, just let us have it, give us this small victory. I apologize to you all for the small break in content. I got a little burnt out on video making with all the massive long videos I was making, plus I was planning to do back-to-back uploads with this video being one of them, but that fell through. Whatever my excuses, I'm fully back now, and preparing to give you guys a whole lot of awesome content in March, and I hope you're ready for it. Thank you all so much for watching, be sure to check my community tab for upcoming videos and polls, and I will see you all next time.